There are plenty of exciting things heading into 2024 for the college football season, and Utah joining the Big 12 is one of them. This is a team that a lot of people expect to win the conference in their first year with this conference, and it's going to be a fun team to watch. This is a well-oiled machine under Kyle Whittingham. Obviously, there's been some exciting things in the offseason that have contributed to that. But it's going to be interesting to see how do they handle this transition and what should we expect from this team in 2024. Today, we take a deep dive into the Utah Utes as the season approaches. We look at what should we expect from this team. Before we do that, though, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video. It goes a long way in helping the channel as well as helping the series grow as well. We're almost near the end of it. College football is nearly upon us, and we're going to wrap up these deep dives here pretty quick. And we're going to do that starting here with Utah today. So we look at Kyle Whittingham. This is a guy who knows how to produce winners. He knows how to produce a program that competes at a high level. And I think one of the things that Big 12 teams are kind of sick of hearing is how tough this team is going to be. And if you've watched Utah over the past however many years that Kyle Whittingham has been here, you're seeing a team that is very difficult to beat because they simply do not quit. They will not give up on a game. They will compete and compete, and it's going to be really tough to shut them down. So that's a really good thing if you're a Utah fan, and it's kind of a tough thing to stomach if you're a Big 12 fan. Andy Ludwig is back to run the offense. He's obviously been on some of these head coach candidates lists. He is someone who's definitely has a potential future as a head coach, but we will see what he can do with this team this year. This is a group that was very much a run heavy team, and the passing attack wasn't exactly what we expected it to be. We obviously saw some flashes of what they could be, but we'll see if they can find a little bit more balance now they have their starting quarterback returning in 2024. Morgan Scalley was named the head coach of the future, so we will see what he can do as a head coach when Kyle Whittingham ultimately hangs it up and is ready to move on from the coaching circles. Morgan Scalley is obviously a very talented defensive coordinator, and his defense has some really exciting talent that's going to make them one of the best in college football once again. We look at a lot of things with Utah and what they can do. And one of the things that we saw from them is what do they do in the transfer portal? And one of the things in this new world of college football is who are you bringing in? How are they contributing? And what can they do to make your team better? So you bring in a guy like Sam Heward to compete for the backup quarterback spot, and we will see how that plays out. Obviously, Cam Rising is the guy, but we will find out pretty quick if he is going to be a contributor for this team or not. Paul Fitzgerald is coming in on the defensive end position for Utah State, or from Utah State, excuse me. So he is someone that it figures to be in that rotation. It's just a matter of if he can see the field frequently enough or not. But he's an interesting talent. Dorian Singer and Damian Alford come in at the wide receiver position. You see a lot of exciting things with both of them. 2 years ago, Dorian Singer was a really exciting player for Arizona. Damian Alford comes in with great size. So you have two guys that could be a big reason why Utah finds more balance in the passing attack this year. You also brought in some talented players on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll find out how quickly they are able to essentially contribute for this team and how quickly they're able to figure things out and learn what we should expect from them in 2024. But you have plenty of talented players, you have plenty of options. And again, you did a really good job. If you're Utah, to me, you found the right guys to put into place. You have good depth now at certain positions because of your transfer portal additions. And it's going to be fun to see what they can do right off the bat to contribute. Now, one of the biggest things for Utah was getting Cam Rising back, and he actually has another year of eligibility in 2025. But I don't. It sounds like he's not planning on using that. It sounds like he is ready to move on from football after this year. And I'm just hoping that he can stay healthy. That's probably the biggest thing, especially after last year. I think there are a lot of people that just really wanted him to just be healthy, and I wish that that was the case. but unfortunately it was not. So he comes back after missing the entire year, and he brings a lot of excitement to the Utah offense. Now, how close to 100% he is might dictate how well this team plays, but having him back at least brings you a level of stability that you maybe didn't have last year. So we talked about Sam Heward. He's going to be part of that rotation as well. Yeah, that's for the backup spot. You look at Brandon Rose and Zach Wilson's the former BYU quarterback, current Denver Bronco, Isaac Wilson, his younger, so Zach's younger brother is on this team as well. So I think that this staff has some questions maybe about what the backup role looks like or who's the quarterback of the future, but you have some options at least for now. Cam Rising, though, is where everything starts. He is the leader of this offense. He is tough as nails. And if he can find some durability, then you're feeling pretty good about what Utah has. Because last year you saw when Cam Rising did not play, Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson just couldn't do what Cam Rising did. They could not move the football through the air. They could not consistently make this offense go. So having Cam Rising back at least raises the floor because you need at least some level of consistency, and that's what Cam Rising brings to the table. He is someone who can be a really good player. He's a veteran presence, and there's some new pieces coming into place. So having him in the huddle is going to be huge for this team. Jalen Glover is the running back one right now. Micah Bernard will be in part of that rotation as well. You feel pretty good about that tandem. Kind of an underrated tandem, honestly. I don't think a lot of people are talking about Jalen Glover and Micah Bernard, the former defensive back turned running back. Those are two guys that'll be really interesting to watch. Utah is going to very much want to run the football. They have the talent to do it. The offensive line feels like it's in a good spot to make that happen. So it's just a matter of how do they step up and what are they ready to prove in 2024. Behind them is where things get a little bit interesting, though you have some young options. Mike Mitchell, Dejon Stanley, and John Randall are three players that will compete for time on the field. It's not going to be a ton of time as long as Glover and Bernard are healthy, but I think that they have a bright future. The staff really likes what they have with those three guys there. The wide receivers, honestly, I don't want to say they're deep because there's it's going to be interesting to see how this group moves the football down the field through the air because they've had talented players before and just haven't moved the football as well. But again, quarterback position and quarterback consistency has been kind of a problem with that. Money Parks is back, one of the best names in college football. Dorian Singer is probably going to be the starter next to him, but you also have Micah Pittman coming back. You bring in Damian Alford from Syracuse. So if you're a Utah fan, this is about as good as you felt about the wide receiver position in quite some time in terms of just pure talent. Dorian Singer has the ability to be an elite player. We saw it at Arizona. Obviously, you don't go over 1,000 yards and it just get lucky like that. You just don't. He is someone who obviously things did not work out at USC, and now he's looking to bounce back with Utah. Alford is a guy who has the talent to be a stud for this team. It's just a matter of being consistent. Micah Pittman is a veteran player who has been around for a while. He'll be a contributor as a receiver, probably in the return game as well. So you feel pretty good about the wide receiver position. You feel like you are in good hands, and you have guys that can be consistent and come down with passes that Cam Rising throws. The tight end position obviously is another position you feel pretty good about. The starters you have are Brant Keithy is back, another veteran player, emphasis on veteran. Seventh year of eligibility for him. Landon King's an underrated tight end, in my opinion. You also brought in Carson Ryan from UCLA. So you have three guys that you feel pretty good about. And then you have Dalen Bentley as well. That could be part of that rotation. So the pass catchers, or if you're looking at helping them run, because that's the other thing. The wide receivers obviously have to catch the football, but unlike most teams, they are going to be more heavily involved in blocking for the rushing attack. So if you are not blocking well, you're probably not going to see the field. If Kyle Whittingham and Andy Ludwig can't trust you to block, they're not going to trust you to catch. So it's kind of you have to do everything. You have to be physical, and that's what makes this team so good is that they are physical. This is a group that very much wants to be the more physical team and find ways to break the will of the teams that they're facing. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, is what do those receivers look like in terms of pass catching, but also what are they going to do to contribute to the rushing attack as well. And obviously that turns us to the offensive line. Now the offensive line is full of guys that are ready to absolutely maul teams. And Spencer Fano at the right tackle position is going to lead the charge. You have plenty of talented players joining him, but he is going to be the guy that gets the job done by the most consistently of all of these guys. And Utah has had some really good offensive lines in years past, and they feel really good about where they're at this year. Caleb Lomu is going to join him on the opposite tackle position. He'll be an interesting player to watch. Teams are definitely going to try and test him as much as possible. And then you have Tanoa Togiai. You're looking at a guard that is joined by Michael Mokofisi, two guys that are very physical and really fun to watch when they're playing on their A game. So you have very physical players that are ready to showcase what they can do. Again, some of these guys are going to be stepping into new roles. Some of these guys are going to be ready to show that they can compete at a high level, and you have good size. Mokafisi comes in at 6'4", 325. Togiai is coming in at 6'6", 320. So you have guys that are physically imposing, and that's going to help you in the Big 12. The Big 12 is a little bit different than maybe years past, but this is definitely a team that can, again, assert themselves and take command of a conference that I don't think is ready for the level of physicality that this team is going to bring. I know that's we've seen that in some of the deep dives already. Some of the comments, they think that they're ready for Utah, and they very well maybe. But I think that if this Utah team is playing at full strength and they are doing what they do every single year, this is going to be a team that is tough to beat. There's a reason why they're picked to win at the conference by a lot of people. And it's not just because they run a pro offense. It's because this team has a great culture, is in good hands with Kyle Whittingham, and that shouldn't be an exception this year. This is a team that is ready to showcase what it can do in a new conference, and they are ready to be physical on offense. They're also ready to absolutely bull rush and basically suffocate every offense that they face. The defensive line is a really interesting group. They've got plenty of talent, as well as some guys that I'm shocked are back. When you look at some of these guys coming back, I'm shocked that a guy like Junior Tafuno feels like he's been in college for forever. Same with Van Fillinger. Those two guys feel like they've been, it's kind of the same thing with Cam Rising and Brant Keithy. These two guys feel like they've been at Utah for so many years, and I'm shocked that they're back. But that's also huge for them. You get those two veterans to help the younger players and other guys that are ready to step up and break out this year. Guys like Logan Fano and Connor O'Toole. Those are two guys that are going to be absolute forces for Utah this year. They have learned a lot from these guys in Tafuna and Fillinger. You're going to see them take steps just because they've been around that level of talent for so long. So then when you look at, we talked about Paul Fitzgerald, he is someone that we'll see if he gets in with Fillinger, but I feel like you have good depth at the defensive end position. Then you have Keanu Tanuvasa at the other defensive tackle position. Tafuna is going to command a lot of attention. So Tanuvasa is going to be someone that could step up and play a big role. Behind those two guys, Samote Pepa and Aliki Vimahi, those are two guys that could play big roles as well. Then you have an Elijah Ellis, and everyone's just going to love the Ellis name based off of what we saw from Jonah Ellis. And it doesn't matter if you're related to Jonah Ellis or not. Within this reason, Jonah Ellis was an absolute stud that not a lot of people knew last year and probably still don't remember. But I think that you're going to see that with Utah, and you feel pretty good about a young guy like that. So you feel pretty good up front. You also feel great about the linebacker position, and that includes losing Levani Damuni for the entire season. He's hurt in the offseason. He will not play this year. And obviously, that's a huge blow to Utah's defense. But you also bring back Kareem Reed and you have Lander Barton. Those are two guys that are going to be all conference type talent and will get the job done. Those are very physical players who have been with this program for a little while now. They know what's expected. They know how to get guys in position. The depth is probably just going to be the concern. Josh Calvert and Sione Fotu are going to have to take on bigger roles. You could also see other players step up as well, but you're going to look at the two guys in Reed and Barton to lead the charge. Now, they do have to stay healthy. That's probably one of the biggest concerns for Utah is can some of these guys stay healthy? Cam Rising is one of them. The tight end position with Keithy and Landon King are you feel like you're pretty good with the depth you have there. But then there's linebacker where you don't have as much depth as you did when Demooney was in the lineup. So some players have to stay healthy. Those are where you probably can't afford to have an injury or too many injuries, but you still feel pretty good about your status for that. The secondary is really interesting because this is a group that was very good at stopping the run and being physical, but stopping the pass was, I want to say they're bad. They finished 65th, but this is still a group that I think would like to take a step forward and improve as a defense. Now, you do lose Cole Bishop. That is one of the biggest losses of maybe any team's secondary. Losing Cole Bishop is going to hurt. However, you still feel pretty good about what you have coming back. Tao Johnson is going to step up into a new role at the safety position. Nate Ritchie is going to join him. Those are two guys to keep an eye on. And one of them is going to have to take over Cole Bishop's role. I don't think you can replace Cole Bishop with a 1-to-1 ratio. I think there's certain players in college football. Jonah Ellis is probably one of those guys as well for Utah. There's just certain players you just can't replace with one guy. It's going to be a group effort. So Richie and Johnson are two guys. Alake Gilman coming in from Stanford, Jonathan Hall. Those are two guys that could also contribute in helping this secondary. Keenan Johnson comes in from Georgia Tech. He's an interesting player to watch. Zamea Vaughn is the other corner to keep an eye on as well. Then you have Smith Snowden, who has, I like a lot of these names for Utah. Smith Snowden just feels like a really good name at the nickel position. Elijah Davis is someone who could be contributing to that as well. Cameron Calhoun comes in from Michigan to be able to contribute to the cornerback position. So you have plenty of talent. You have the ability to get things done. You have Morgan Scalley coming back, and you have plenty of veteran talent that can get these new faces and these young faces up to speed. The biggest question for Utah is how are they going to navigate this schedule? That's probably the biggest thing is what are they going to do with this new schedule? You're playing a lot of new teams that you've never faced before, but you do face some talent that you've seen in the past. You start the year with Southern Utah on a Thursday. That's going to be a win. And then you get the new faces right off the bat. You get Baylor at home, though. So at least that feels pretty good. You saw what they did last year to the Bears on the road, and now they get Baylor at home. Dave Aranda is trying to make sure that he has a job in 2025. So they're going to be playing really hard. And this is a Utah team that needs to lean in to their toughness and lean into the home crowd and find ways to shut down that Baylor team. At Utah State is very interesting. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Utah is 79-30-4 all time versus Utah State. Utah State also is going through a coach shakeup as they'll have an interim head coach with Blake Anderson getting fired. Then they go to Oklahoma State. They have Arizona right after that. So you get to learn real quick if Utah is indeed a legitimate contender. And the fact that they have to go to Oklahoma State there, that will be interesting. And Oklahoma State is a team that expects to be at the top of the Big 12 as well. So that is a huge game that has major implications in the Big 12 race. Arizona is a team that expects to be in that as well, though that's not a new team to Utah. They obviously know what Utah is, or Arizona is. They are very aware of how Arizona plays, and Utah should be just fine. Another team 2 weeks later, Arizona State, a road trip to Tempe. That's not going to be anything new. They know what the Sun Devils are capable of. Then you get TCU at home. Now, TCU, we'll find out real quick if they're actually a legitimate team or if they're just kind of struggling. Either way, it's still going to be an interesting game. The fact that it's at home makes it feel a lot better. The final stretch is where things get interesting. At Houston isn't a concern, but believe it or not, Utah is actually 0-4 all time versus Houston. So that is very interesting fact that they haven't won, I feel like that changes even though it's on the road. And then you get 2 weeks off before you go a rivalry game in the Holy War versus BYU. That's at home. You also get to see a trip to Colorado. You get Iowa State and at UCF. So that last game stretch is a difficult one. I think that Colorado will find out if this is a team that is capable of beating Utah at this point. We're definitely going to know that answer, or if Colorado is just going to be struggling. Iowa State is coming to Utah, so that's huge. I think going to Ames is a unique challenge. So I feel like if they're the team built to handle that adversity, it's definitely Utah. And then at UCF, UCF's another team that is kind of a quiet team to compete for the Big 12 championship. So you have plenty of tests on this schedule. You have plenty of opportunities for wins. When you look at what the ceiling should be for this team, what the ceiling should be is 12-0. I think that this team is very capable of winning every single game. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's just that's what the ceiling is. I also could see 11-1 if someone says that's the ceiling. They're still tough games. At Oklahoma State is tough. At Colorado could be tough. At UCF is tough. So this is definitely going to be a fun team to watch in terms of what they can do. The floor doesn't feel like it's that low. I don't think it's going to be difficult to see. You can definitely find if Cam Rising gets hurt, that makes this much different, and it's a reason why they went 8-5 last year. So if Cam Rising goes down, depending on when he goes down and doesn't come back, the Baylor game is very interesting. Oklahoma State game is obviously a losable game. Arizona is a losable game. And I think that you're looking at other games like TCU, Colorado. I don't know, Iowa State and UCF are definitely losable games, but TCU, Colorado, BYU, those are games that you could see Utah slipping up if they don't have the quarterback position in place, because we saw that last year. But again, that's where things are going wrong. So we're not going to just automatically assume that that's where they're going to be. But a 10-2 finish is very realistic. I think that's kind of right in that sweet spot. But again, if everyone stays healthy, or the right guys, I should say, stay healthy, Utah is a team that is going to be in business in 2024, and this is going to be a very tough team. The Big 12 is in for a rude awakening if that's the case. And this is a team that's going to be competing for a conference championship.